No cities, no blue oceans, no life, only a molten sphere, blazing, chaotic, and furious. About 4.5 billion years ago, Earth looked like nothing you've ever seen. There was no land, just lava, boiling and exploding, forming waves of molten rock that glowed red like blood. The atmosphere was a toxic soup of methane, ammonia, and sulfur, enough to kill any living thing, if any had existed. Above, meteors rained down relentlessly. Each impact had the force of millions of atomic bombs. There were no days on Earth, only an eternal twilight, as thick clouds of ash blocked the sunlight. No trees, no oceans, not a single bacterium could survive this hell, and certainly no humans. We did not exist. No voices, no thoughts, no hope. Even the idea of life itself had not yet been born. And yet, from this darkest of places came a beginning. In the heart of that inferno, the first sparks were about to ignite, not the light of gods, but of chemistry, of molecules beginning to bind. Earth had no people, but it was preparing for something that would one day change the universe forever. Life. Part 2. Life from fire and water. After millions of years of chaos, Earth began to cool. The first rains fell, not for hours, but for millions of years without pause. Torrential downpours quenched the molten surface. Lava hardened into stone. Craters filled with water, and from that, the first oceans were born. But beneath the surface of what seemed like peaceful water, something strange was happening. At volcanic vents deep on the ocean floor, where water boiled from hellish heat, minerals erupted from the Earth's core. In a place without sunlight, without oxygen, chemical reactions silently unfolded. And there, in the dark, under crushing pressure and boiling temperatures, life was born. Not fish, not coral, no eyes, no brain, no consciousness, just tiny clusters of matter, what we now call primitive cells. What made them different was one simple, profound thing: replication. They were not born from parents. They made copies of themselves, using the molecules around them. These first life forms were too small to see with the naked eye, yet they became the ancestors of everything, from grass and insects to dolphins and humans. There was no miracle, no divine creator, only chemistry, meeting the right moment under the right conditions. And from that spark, evolution began. Earth was no longer a dead planet. It had learned to breathe, and from that breath, nothing could stop life from spreading. Part 3. The first breath of life. Billions of microscopic organisms drifted through the primordial seas. They lived, died, and replicated, but all of them were the same. None of them changed the world. Until cyanobacteria appeared. They were blue-green bacteria. No eyes, no bones. But they carried within them a discovery that would reshape the planet: photosynthesis. For the first time, a living creature knew how to capture sunlight and turn it into energy. And the waste product they released by accident was oxygen. No one asked them to do it. There was no noble purpose. It was simply how they survived. But the consequence was the greatest biological revolution in Earth's history. Molecule by molecule, oxygen was released. At first, it dissolved in water. Then slowly, silently, it began to spread into the atmosphere. Not fast, not loud, but unstoppable. Toxic gases like methane and sulfur were slowly pushed back. Earth began to breathe. There were no fireworks, no witness to record it. But that moment marked Earth's transformation from a realm of death to a world of life. And the cruel irony? That same oxygen boom ended up killing most of the original life forms, the ones that had thrived in the toxic air before. The first mass extinction in Earth's history was caused by clean air. The reason you can breathe right now is thanks to creatures no one remembers, but they built the atmosphere that all future life would depend on. Not humans, not gods, just bacteria. Art 4. When life crawled onto land. For hundreds of millions of years, all life remained underwater. The ocean was safe, toxic air was filtered by water, dim light couldn't burn flesh, and every predator knew how to swim. But then, some creatures defied those limits. They left the sea, not out of curiosity, but out of necessity. Maybe the ocean had grown too crowded. Maybe a desperate chase forced them to flee. But whatever the reason, that moment changed everything. It was the dawn of the amphibians, the first animals to breathe air, even for just a few minutes on land. They weren't beautiful. They weren't fast. They crawled with wet limbs across cracked earth. Every step was a struggle. Skin cracked, eyes watered, but they didn't turn back. They endured. And they adapted. And because of that, they opened a whole new world, a virgin continent, untouched by life. From those fragile creatures, over millions of years, all land-dwelling vertebrates would descend. Some would run fast, some would grow fur, some would learn to fly, and one species that one day would dream, build, and destroy would be called human. None of them were the strongest, but they were the boldest. Because in evolution, the winners aren't those with the sharpest claws, but those who dare to go where no life has gone before. Part 5. The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaur Empire. Millions of years after life conquered land, Earth entered the reign of giants. Dinosaurs. They weren't just a species, they were an empire. Some were taller than buildings. Some ran faster than horses. Some ate leaves. Some ate meat. And nothing survived when their jaws opened. From jungles and plains to swamps, every corner of the planet belonged to them. No mammal dared lift its head. No species had a chance to seize the throne. They ruled for 160 million years, longer than all of human civilization combined. And then, in a single moment, it ended. 65 million years ago, a massive asteroid, more than 10 kilometers wide, came hurtling from space. It struck the Yucatan Peninsula, in present-day Mexico, at 70,000 kilometers per hour. The impact unleashed an explosion billions of times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb, vaporizing everything for hundreds of kilometers. But the real death came after. Ash choked the sky. The sun disappeared. Global temperatures plummeted. Plants died. Herbivores starved. And in the end, the largest predators collapsed, with nothing left to eat. There were no roars, no rescue. The dinosaurs were gone. And Earth, once ruled by thunderous giants, fell silent again. But in that silence, something small survived. Trembling, hiding, waiting. Because when the strongest fall, the stage belongs to those who know how to wait. Part 6. The Age of Mammals. As the ash from the dinosaur-killing impact still hung in the sky, in the dark corners of ancient forests, tiny creatures kept breathing. No scales, no claws, nowhere near 30 meters long. These were the first mammals, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. They had once been the timid ones, living under the shadow of the dinosaurs, hiding by day, hunting by night. They ate insects, fallen fruit, anything they could swallow, and they survived by staying humble. It was their small size that saved them. When the dinosaurs starved, they only needed a few nuts, a few bugs, and they endured. They weren't the strongest, but they were the most adaptable. Time passed. The forests returned. The climate warmed. Grass grew. Trees spread, and those tiny survivors began to take over. Some climbed trees. Some ran across the ground. Some dug burrows. Some evolved fur to retain warmth. And most importantly, their brains began to grow. Eyes became sharper. Ears more sensitive. Hands could grasp. And among the millions of these creatures, a strange new group emerged. Primates. They watched. They remembered where ripe fruit grew. They used sticks as tools. They played. They learned from each other. This was no longer just instinct. This was memory, experience, and learning. From a world where dinosaurs no longer reigned, a new era began, where strength wasn't measured in teeth or claws. but in the size of your brain. Life never gives up. It simply changes strategy. Part 7. When humans stood on 2 feet. 7 million years ago, Africa's lush forests began to fade. The climate changed. Rain fell less often. Trees withered. And the creatures who had once lived safely among the branches were forced to descend. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. Out in the open grasslands, walking on all fours was no longer an advantage. Those that could stand upright and walk on 2 legs could see farther, spot predators earlier, and carry more food. This wasn't just a step, it was a revolution. Hands were freed, no longer needed to support the body. They were now tools for gripping, holding, creating. And with that freedom, the brain began to grow, because the body now demanded more: coordination, memory, planning. Around 2.4 million years ago, a new species appeared, Homo habilis, the handy man. They made stone tools. They could cut meat, crack bones, defend themselves. Then came Homo erectus, the upright man. They were the first humans to master fire, not just for warmth, but to cook food, scare off predators, and extend life into the night. They were no longer alone. They lived in groups, hunted together, migrated, learned from one another. They were becoming human. And from Africa, they stepped out into the world. No maps, no compass, just bare feet, and a brain unlike anything Earth had ever seen. These were no longer just animals. They were the first humans, and they were beginning the journey to write the history of humankind. Part 8. Who was the first human? Around 300,000 years ago, on the dry plains of East Africa, a new kind of being emerged, unlike anything the Earth had seen before. They were Homo sapiens, the ones who think. They weren't bigger, they didn't run faster, but inside their skulls was the largest brain ever to appear on this planet. They didn't just survive, they imagined. They remembered the past, dreamed of the future, and pictured things that had never existed. They hunted in groups, not with brute force, but with strategy. They divided roles: stalkers, chasers, ambushers. They didn't just live, they cooperated to live. And one day, they painted the first shapes onto cave walls: an antelope, a handprint, a mark, not to decorate, but to communicate. From there, language was born. No longer meaningless sounds, but shared meaning. And with language came history. But who was the first? Who is the shared ancestor of all of us? By analyzing mitochondrial DNA, the genetic material passed down from mother to child, scientists discovered something shocking. Every person alive today carries traces of the same woman. She lived in Africa between 150,000 and 200,000 years ago. They call her mitochondrial Eve. She wasn't the first woman. She wasn't the only one. But she was the last whose maternal lineage survives unbroken, carried by thousands of daughters through the millennia. She wasn't divine, just a woman who lived, gave birth, and left her trace in the blood of billions. And the secret that allowed our brains to grow so large: cooking. When our ancestors began to cook, they spent less energy digesting and more energy building brains. That was when imagination began. Then myth, then ritual, then tools, then gods. There was no single Adam and Eve moment, but there was a turning point when we stopped being animals and started becoming human. Part 9. Humanity and what comes next. Once we were trembling creatures in the dark. Now we dream of the stars. Once we huddled in caves chewing raw meat. Today we build skyscrapers, design robots, write code for artificial intelligence, and send machines to Mars. From the first fire to quantum data. But this journey, it's far from over. We often believe that humans are the pinnacle of evolution. But the truth is, we are just a stop, a temporary chapter in the thick book of life. Evolution hasn't ended. In a few thousand years, humans may no longer look like they do now. Bones may be lighter, eyes may be sharper, hands may merge with machines, or perhaps We won't even be biological anymore. We're already merging with technology. Smart glasses, medical implants, AI that guides decisions. One day, we might upload memories to the cloud, live in artificial bodies, or even choose our own shape. Or maybe we'll find a new home beyond Earth and start over on another planet. There may be no more Homo sapiens, but Homo futura? Or something beyond even the word homo? Whatever comes, we are not the ending. We are just one branch among billions that have ever existed on Earth. And the most terrifying and beautiful truth: we may be the first branch to ever decide what we will evolve into. Today we live among towers of steel, holding phones with more computing power than the Apollo mission that landed humans on the moon. But every time you look in the mirror, remember, inside you flows the blood of those who once walked barefoot across deserts, trembled in firelit caves, sharpened stones beneath a full moon. We are not just the present. We are the result of millions of years of evolution, suffering, survival, and hope. And if you want to keep traveling through the forgotten chapters of human history, where truth is often stranger than myth, subscribe now, because the stories yet to come will make you see yourself with entirely new eyes.